Everyone thought Tommy Norris was finished. M-TEX had more money, more power, more allies, and more control over the city than anyone else. But Season 3 proves something dangerous when you push Tommy into a corner. He doesn't break, he rebuilds, and the war against M-TEX was never about strength. It was about patience. Season 3 opens with a clear message. M-TEX is untouchable. They don't just run a company, they run the system. They control contracts, banks, media, and even the people who are supposed to keep them in check. By the time the season starts, Tommy Norris has already lost ground. His projects are frozen. His partners are nervous. His name is being dragged through public news like he is the villain. And worst of all, M-TEX wants him erased completely. At first, Tommy reacts the way everyone expects him to. He gets angry. He pushes back hard. He tries to hit M-TEX directly, but every move he makes only makes them stronger. When he challenges them in business, they undercut him with bigger money. When he speaks out publicly, they twist the story and make him look unstable. When he tries to fight legally, their lawyers bury him in paperwork and delays. It feels like watching someone punch a concrete wall. But here's the key detail. Tommy starts watching instead of fighting. He begins to notice small cracks inside M-TEX. Their CEO looks confident in public, but behind closed doors he is tense. The board members are not fully united. Some care about profit, some care about reputation. Some are scared of government attention. That difference matters. Tommy realizes something powerful. Big empires fall from the inside, not the outside. Instead of attacking loudly, he goes quiet, and that silence scares people more than shouting ever could. He stops answering interviews. He pulls back from public fights. He lets M-TEX believe they have already won. This is the first smart move of the season. Because when your enemy thinks you are weak, they lower their guard. Tommy also studies their pattern. Every move M-TEX makes follows profit. They are greedy. They push too far. They rush deals without thinking about long-term damage. And that greed becomes the weak spot. There is one important scene where Tommy sits alone, looking at old blueprints of a project he lost to M-TEX. Instead of showing anger, his face shows calm focus. That moment tells the audience everything. He is no longer trying to survive. He is planning to win. He starts rebuilding his network slowly, not with big names, but with people M-TEX ignored. Small investors, local contractors, people who were pushed aside. He listens to them. He builds trust. He gives them something M-TEX never gives, respect. At the same time, M-TEX keeps expanding. They move into risky areas. They take shortcuts. They silence critics. They believe their size makes them safe. But in reality, the bigger they grow, the harder they can fall. The war in Season 3 is not loud explosions or street fights. It's quiet pressure. It's about who can stay calm longer. And in this first part of the season, we see the biggest shift in Tommy's character. He learns control. Instead of reacting to every attack, he waits. He lets M-TEX think they are choking him out. But what he is really doing is studying their breathing pattern. Because you cannot defeat a giant by hitting its chest. You defeat it by cutting off its balance. And that is exactly what Tommy Norris is preparing to do. M-TEX isn't just a company. It's an empire built to survive every kind of attack. And the more Tommy studies it, the more he realizes just how dangerous they really are. From the outside, M-TEX looks perfect. Sleek offices, impressive deals, and loyal employees. But the true strength is not just in what they show, it's in the invisible systems holding them together. They have lawyers who can twist the law before anyone even notices. They have politicians who owe them favors and are willing to bend rules. They have accountants and analysts who can find loopholes in any plan. Every part of their empire is connected, and every part reinforces the other. Trying to hit them head-on is like punching through steel. The CEO of M-TEX is not a simple villain. He is smart, calculating, and patient in ways that match Tommy's intelligence. He doesn't just fight to win. He fights to demoralize, he makes sure every competitor, every investor, and every journalist knows the cost of crossing him. And it works. People fear him before they even meet him. Tommy quickly realizes that brute force, aggressive lawsuits, or public attacks won't work. M-TEX can absorb it, twist it, and turn it against him. What makes M-TEX even more untouchable is how they control information. Public perception is one of their deadliest weapons. Anytime Tommy tries to challenge them, the media suddenly paints him as reckless or unstable. Their social media campaigns, subtle news leaks, and even strategic charity events create the illusion that M-TEX is untouchable, ethical, and unbeatable. For Tommy, this isn't just a battle of money or strategy, it's a battle for truth itself. He has to find ways to break through an empire built on perception, but another layer of M-TEX's strength comes from their internal loyalty, or at least the appearance of it. Employees, executives, and key partners are carefully monitored. Some stay out of fear, others out of ambition. Any hint of betrayal is punished quietly but clearly. Tommy observes that to defeat M-TEX, he can't just rely on external moves. He has to understand their internal ecosystem. Where are the cracks? Who feels undervalued? Who might resent the CEO's control? The answer is hidden in relationships, in loyalty tested and weakened over time. And yet, even with all this knowledge, Tommy feels the weight of the impossible task ahead. Every plan must account for layers of protection, hidden loyalties, and the unpredictable behavior of people under pressure. One wrong step could cost him everything he has rebuilt. But there's a lesson in this awareness. Understanding the enemy is as important as any attack. Knowledge becomes power, and patience becomes a weapon. By the middle of this section, Tommy begins seeing patterns that most people would miss. M-TEX reacts in predictable ways when under subtle stress. Their greed makes them overextend, their desire for control makes them blind to internal conflict, and their reliance on reputation makes them hesitant when credibility is threatened. Tommy takes notes, observes, and waits. Each action from M-TEX becomes a signal, a clue about where the empire is weakest. And like a frontal attack, this is a war fought in whispers, in observation, and in mental chess. This is when the audience starts to see the brilliance behind Tommy's strategy. The contrast between him and M-TEX is clear. They rely on power and fear. He relies on insight and patience. By understanding their strength so deeply, he's preparing to use it against them, not by charging at the wall, but by finding the door they forgot to lock. Every move they make feeds his knowledge, and every misstep brings him closer to a plan that could topple the empire quietly, efficiently, and irreversibly. The takeaway is clear. To win against M-TEX, Tommy doesn't need to fight like them. He needs to fight smarter than them, one small, calculated step at a time. And that careful observation sets the stage for the next phase of his war, where patience and intelligence will become more lethal than money, influence, or fear ever could. By the time Season 3 reaches its midpoint, it becomes clear that the war against M-TEX isn't just external, it's personal. Tommy Norris is no longer just reacting to attacks. He is changing from the inside out. Early in the season, he's still fueled by anger, by frustration, by the injustice of seeing his empire challenged at every turn. Every setback with M-TEX hits him hard. Deals fall through. Allies hesitate. Media spins his moves. The old Tommy, the one who would strike impulsively, is still there, but it becomes painfully obvious that acting on emotion is a trap he can't afford. The transformation begins in subtle ways. He isolates himself from distractions, reevaluates his strategies, and starts to watch M-TEX not as a monster to destroy but as a machine to study. Instead of focusing on retaliation, he begins dissecting every action, every decision, every pattern. In boardrooms, he listens more than he speaks. In meetings with former allies, he asks questions instead of giving orders. Slowly, Tommy shifts from being a reactor to an architect, from someone who fires blindly to someone who calculates plans and waits for the perfect moment. This shift is mirrored in his interactions with people. Early on, he alienated those closest to him because of rash decisions and impulsive anger. Now, he rebuilds these relationships carefully, offering respect and listening without judgment. Local investors who once felt overlooked begin to see him as someone who values loyalty over profit. Employees who once questioned his leadership start trusting his vision again. Tommy's emotional intelligence becomes as much a weapon as any legal or financial strategy. This is a man who has learned that winning isn't about crushing people, it's about aligning them with you at the right moment. A key part of this transformation is the realization that the war with M-TEX is not a sprint, but a marathon. Every public victory, every small leverage point is temporary unless it fits into a larger, long-term plan. Tommy spends hours analyzing M-TEX's internal weaknesses, rivalries between executives, conflicting interests of investors, and the CEO's overconfidence in his own invulnerability. He begins laying the groundwork for subtle manipulation, turning their own strengths into vulnerabilities. This is a calculated patience he never practiced before, and it marks the turning point, where Tommy moves from being reactive to proactive. The audience begins to notice another layer of Tommy's growth, his ability to control perception. He no longer responds immediately to M-TEX's provocations. When the media questions his authority or mocks his failures, he remains silent, letting M-TEX overplay their hand. He understands that in this war, perception is almost as important as reality. By controlling his reactions, he forces M-TEX to make mistakes in public, exposing cracks that were invisible before. Tommy also begins experimenting with alliances differently than in the past. Instead of recruiting the obvious power players, he identifies those overlooked or underestimated by M-TEX. Small contractors, minor investors, or disenchanted employees become his hidden weapons. Each new alliance is carefully nurtured and tested, ensuring loyalty and discretion. Unlike his previous strategies, this approach doesn't rush for immediate gain. It builds a network of support capable of moving when the critical moment comes. Perhaps the most dramatic aspect of this transformation is psychological. Tommy develops a patience and discipline that mirrors the very traits he once despised in his enemies. He learns to sit through uncertainty, to endure setbacks without panic, and to watch M-TEX's moves as if he were observing a chessboard. Every emotional impulse is controlled, every decision weighed against long-term consequences. This season visually reinforces this through quiet, contemplative scenes. Tommy reviewing files late at night, revisiting old plans, watching M-TEX events from a distance. The silent moments carry more weight than the loud confrontations, signaling a strategic mind in evolution. By the end of this section of Season 3, Tommy is no longer the man who reacts to threats. He has become the architect of a larger design, a strategist who can anticipate M-TEX's moves before they even happen. The transformation is complete, from a fighter trapped in the moment to a planner controlling the flow of the war itself. It is this shift that sets up the next stage, where subtle moves, careful manipulations, and psychological warfare will allow him to exploit weaknesses that no one else sees, and begin the path toward victory that once seemed impossible. Tommy Norris knows by now that hitting M-TEX head-on will only strengthen them. They are too big, too connected, too cautious, so he pivots to a tactic that requires patience, precision, and subtlety, breaking the empire from the inside out. Instead of confronting M-TEX publicly or challenging their projects directly, Tommy focuses on their human weaknesses, the rivalries, the ambitions, the overlooked insecurities that even the CEO can't fully control. This is the moment when Tommy's strategy becomes less about what he can build and more about what he can dismantle without anyone noticing. The first move in this internal strategy is observation. Tommy identifies the key players within M-TEX. Executives who crave recognition, investors who are quietly dissatisfied, employees who feel undervalued. Each person has a different motivation, and Tommy exploits this. He starts planting subtle seeds of doubt, not by confrontation, but by suggestion. A carefully timed rumor here, A strategically worded tip there. The goal isn't to destroy them individually, but to make their interests clash, to create tension that grows quietly over time. In this way, M-TEX begins to fight itself while Tommy remains invisible in the background. Next, Tommy leverages small victories that seem insignificant at first but carry long-term consequences. He manipulates contracts and public announcements to create pressure on certain executives, forcing them to question decisions or clash with colleagues, a missed deadline, a misread market trend, or a financial oversight might appear accidental to outsiders, but to those within M-TEX, it feels like an internal failure. Tommy watches closely as frustration and paranoia spread. Executives begin second-guessing each other, investors whisper concerns, and the CEO starts noticing tensions that were previously buried. Tommy doesn't need to act directly, he's guiding the dominoes from a distance. Another layer of his strategy involves turning M-TEX's own allies against them. Some investors or business partners feel the company has grown too greedy or reckless. Tommy quietly approaches them with data and subtle insights, showing that loyalty to M-TEX could be risky if certain decisions continue. By highlighting weaknesses without appearing threatening, he encourages these outsiders to hedge their bets or reconsider support. Suddenly, M-TEX loses the quiet confidence of the networks they depended on, allies who once moved in lockstep start questioning their position, creating an invisible gap in the empire's armor. Tommy also exploits internal communications and minor disputes that M-TEX dismisses as trivial. He watches how the executives handle disagreements, how the CEO reacts to minor criticism, how information travels through the company. Each misstep is cataloged, each hesitation is remembered. Over time, these small fractures grow into larger vulnerabilities. The once tightly controlled environment begins showing cracks. Conflicting priorities emerge, miscommunication delays decisions, and subtle competition between team members undermines cohesion. Tommy's careful patience allows these tiny vulnerabilities to multiply without ever risking his own exposure. A crucial moment occurs when one of M-TEX's top executives makes a critical decision based on fear rather than strategy, a decision Tommy has anticipated for weeks. He had positioned events in such a way that the executive's choice would alienate other board members, creating conflict. The ripple effect is immediate, trust erodes, communication falters, and internal alliances weaken. Tommy doesn't intervene. He waits, observing the chaos as it spreads, knowing that the company is now reacting to him rather than the other way around. By using this divide and conquer method, Tommy turns M-TEX's strength into a liability. Their size and complexity, which once made them untouchable, now work against them. The more they try to assert control, the more visible their internal conflicts become. Their employees and investors are forced to pick sides, alliances shift, and decisions become slower, less confident, and more chaotic. Each move Tommy makes is indirect, invisible, yet devastatingly effective. The brilliance of this phase is that it sets up the next steps without any overt confrontation. Tommy doesn't need a public battle or legal war yet. The company is already weakening from within. He has created the perfect storm of internal tension, where M-TEX starts undermining itself before he even makes his decisive move. By the end of this section, the audience sees a critical truth. In a war of empires, sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't money, guns, or influence. It's understanding people and knowing exactly how to make them fight each other. Without realizing it, Tommy Norris has become a master of this invisible battlefield, turning patience, observation, and subtlety into tools sharper than any sword. By now, Tommy Norris has done more than just rebuild himself. He has positioned his enemies exactly where he wants them. M-TEX is starting to crack under the pressure of internal conflict, but the final and most decisive battlefield is not financial or legal, it is psychological. The war Tommy wages here is invisible, silent, and far more dangerous than any open confrontation. Every move is designed to get inside the minds of M-TEX's leaders, making them doubt, panic, and ultimately act against their own interests. Psychological warfare begins with control of perception. Tommy carefully manipulates what M-TEX knows and thinks they know. He allows certain information to leak in subtle, believable ways enough to make the CEO second-guess decisions, but never enough to reveal his hand. It's the kind of strategy that requires patience and restraint. Every hint, every rumor, every accidental oversight is calculated. M-TEX begins seeing threats where none exist, imagining attacks from allies, and questioning every choice. Their confidence starts to crumble, and Tommy watches it happen like a general observing a battlefield from the high ground. Another tool Tommy uses is unpredictability. After weeks of patient observation and manipulation, he stops being the reactive figure M-TEX expects. The CEO is used to Tommy panicking, overreacting, or responding publicly, but now Tommy does nothing, or at least nothing obvious. He appears calm, unshakable, and inscrutable. This forces M-TEX into overthinking. When they can no longer predict him, they start making mistakes. Orders are given too quickly, decisions are rushed, and paranoia spreads through their ranks. The more they try to control the situation, the more they lose control. Tommy has learned that sometimes doing nothing at the right moment is the deadliest move of all. Tommy also uses fear as a silent weapon. He doesn't threaten publicly. He doesn't scream. Instead, he creates situations where M-TEX feels constantly under observation and judged. Minor errors, conflicting reports, and subtle reminders of past failures are enough to make the CEO and his team tense and defensive. Anxiety grows quietly but consistently, eroding rational thinking. What looks like small pressure builds into a mental trap where M-TEX reacts emotionally rather than strategically. This is where Tommy's understanding of human behavior pays off. He knows the lines between greed, pride, and fear, and he uses all three to guide his enemies towards self-destructs. The psychological war also extends to M-TEX's allies, investors, employees, and minor partners all start questioning whether staying loyal is worth the risk. Tommy strategically provides small opportunities for doubt numbers slightly misrepresented. Whispers of instability.